Our guest today is the director of the Illinois Emergency Management Agency. He was appointed by the governor 11 months ago. Prior to this assignment, our guest today was executive director of Chicago's Office of Emergency Management and Communications, OEMC. Our guest today has also served in various capacities in the Chicago Police Department for 10 years. He served his country as a member of the U.S. Army for a total of 6 years. Our guest today earned an MBA from St. Xavier University and a Master of Science degree in Criminal Justice from Illinois State University. Ladies and gentlemen, the Director of Emergency Management for the state of Illinois, Andrew Velasquez. Andrew?
Thank you and good afternoon. Jay, thank you for that very kind introduction. I appreciate that. In short order, I'm going to be talking about the core competencies of the Illinois Emergency Management Agency and what we do day in and day out. But before I get into my comments, I think it's only appropriate that we take a moment to reflect upon what occurred at Northern Illinois University. You'll also have an opportunity to hear what the role was that the Illinois Emergency Management Agency had in relation to this very tragic incident. But what I'd like for us to do at this point in time is to just reflect on and take a moment of silence to remember those that unfortunately perished in this tragic incident, and also to remember those that are currently recovering from this tragic incident. As you know, NIU opened its doors again today, and they are moving forward, and they are on the road to recovery. So if we can just take a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. Clear and present danger. When you hear these words, the lawyers among you are probably thinking of a Supreme Court decision. Many of you are thinking of Harrison Ford in the movie. But to many in emergency management, it is what they face each and every day. And today, I will briefly outline the dangers that are germane to the state of Illinois, what the state is doing to confront those dangers, and to talk about how the public and how businesses can do their part. The danger is clear, and it comes from a variety of sources. We have natural dangers. We have nuclear dangers. We have dangers that come from foreign and domestic terrorists. And so I'd like to take this opportunity just to outline briefly some of these dangers. And as I previously stated, some of these dangers are natural dangers, dangers that are inherent to our environment, such as ice storms, tornadoes, extreme heat, blizzards, even earthquakes are real dangers that we face here in Illinois. Most recently, IEMA has had to deal with a wide array of emergencies, and we have worked very diligently to support those local units of government that have been impacted by these emergencies and disasters. Tornadoes are dangers, real dangers that we face in Illinois. We have experienced numerous tornadoes in Illinois. Some tornadoes were more devastating than others. In some of these events, extensive property damage was the result. In others, unfortunately, people lost their lives. But IEMA, in one capacity or another, was there to provide assistance and to render aid. The slide that you see before you now is a picture of some of the damage that was experienced in Springfield, Illinois, not too long ago. Springfield was struck with a very serious tornado. Fortunately, no lives were lost, but they incurred approximately $18 million in damage. There was a huge coordination effort that was necessary and that was required, and IEMA was there to provide assistance and to render aid. Many of you are familiar with the tornadoes that occurred in Utica. In fact, some of the folks in this very room here were responsible for responding to this incident, as well as providing assistance through mutual aid and other compacts. And you see here what's really important. It's just a true snapshot of all of the folks that responded and were working in collaboration during this incident. And unfortunately, some lives here were lost. Floods. Floods are real dangers that we experience in Illinois. In August of 2007, we experienced some very significant storms in northern Illinois. The governor declared 13 counties as state disaster areas. Huge. IEMA, again, was there to provide assistance from the perspective of damage assessments, as well as facilitating resource requests for those local entities that were severely impacted. Most recently, January of 2008, 2 counties declared disaster areas by the governor: Iroquois and Livingston County. This is the city of Watseka, which is in Iroquois County. 75% of this city was underwater. It's a city of approximately 5,500 people. Here's a headline that you didn't see. 565 people were rescued by rescue boats during this disaster here. The floodwaters had risen so quickly that they were trapped in their homes. IEMA facilitated the resource requests, helped provide the John boats to aid in these rescues. 565. That's a headline that you did not see, but it's something that we were very proud of. Ice storms. Ice storms present very widespread damages and significantly impact many, many communities. These ice storms occurred most recently in December, and as early as last week. IEMA was out providing assistance to those communities in southern Illinois that were impacted significantly by these ice storms. Heavy ice accumulations result in widespread power outages. They result in displaced individuals. And so there has to be a coordinated effort out there in the field to ensure that people are receiving the aid that they deserve. I was just talking to Fidel Marquez here at the lunch table, and we experienced widespread power outages, but in our SEOC, when it stood up, our State Emergency Operations Center, we have the ICC, the Illinois Commerce Commission, that has a seat there, and they work very closely with the utility companies to ensure that those widespread outages are handled as quickly as possible. And I commend, Fidel and all of the utility companies who have entered into a mutual aid partnership, a regional partnership, a Midwestern partnership, as well as partnerships with other states that are not within the region to ensure that they can receive additional assistance and personnel to go out there and address these particular power outages. So that's just a snapshot of some of the natural dangers that we experience in the state of Illinois. Man has not yet learned how to control Mother Nature, and maybe he never will. Some say that because of global warming, the situation is going to get worse and not better. So we have to learn how to cope with these dangers. And IEMA is committed to working with local communities to make sure that there are good systems of early warning in place. to ensure that there are swift recovery operations in place, and to ensure that there are strong recovery and response efforts in place. IEMA's Bureau of Disaster Assistance and Preparedness works very closely with local units of government to ensure that they have plans in place to address various hazards. Those hazard mitigation plans are very important. They work very closely to provide guidance and training to local units of government to ensure that they understand the damage assessment process. So that way, when it comes time to request a major disaster declaration from the President, they have all of their figures calculated, all of their numbers estimated appropriately, so that way we can effectively petition the governor and the President of the U.S. for a major disaster declaration. Nature presents us with a wide array of disasters, but we have to learn how to cope with them. And we also have to learn how to cope with those dangers that are, in essence, the result of man's actions. Just as an example, Illinois benefits greatly from the processes that give off ionizing radiation. We have 11 operating nuclear plants, or nuclear reactors, in the state of Illinois. These nuclear reactors serve as an important source of energy. Without them, we wouldn't be able to power our businesses. We would not be able to light our homes. Many medical treatments and diagnostic tests depend on radiation. And so we need radiation. We need these resources. We need these processes. There are times when spent nuclear fuel travels through the state of Illinois. And we would lead much different lives if we did not have these processes in place, right? We wouldn't have x-rays. We wouldn't have these different diagnostic tests. Electricity would be much more expensive. But IEMA is the entity that is responsible for ensuring that these particular individuals that handle these materials have the appropriate licenses, making sure that they are regulated. And so again, we need these things, but we want to make sure that we guard against the dangers that they bring with them. And so IEMA's Division of Nuclear Safety is responsible for over 24 safety programs in the state of Illinois. We have the most comprehensive monitoring system for our 11 operating nuclear reactors in the country. We are recognized as a national model. We have representation from so many different entities in our offices that have expertise in so many different areas, from the environmental safety standpoint, from the radiation safety standpoint, nuclear physicists, scientists, all responsible for making sure that we have the appropriate measures in place to safeguard Illinois residents against the potential dangers of radiation. The dangers that they bring are real, but the efforts that we have in place to safeguard Illinois residents are also very real. And so nuclear danger arises from the efforts of man to make the world better. But we also face dangers that are the result of man intent on wanting to inflict danger and harm intentionally. And so we deal with issues that relate to foreign and domestic terrorism. We may not understand why these terrorists resort to the destruction that they resort to. And it's certainly not hard to visualize the damage and the devastation that they cause. The words Oklahoma City conjure up many vivid images of bleeding preschoolers, mass casualties, and a bombed-out building. September 11th evokes many memories so stark that it has changed the way that many of us view the world. A little over a week ago, a single gunman brought death, fear, and heartache right here in Illinois, right at Northern Illinois University. I think some of the newspapers said, frankly, all the things that we were thinking. Northern Illinois University, a tragedy here. Why? So close to home. People acting alone or people acting together can cause so much damage and so much destruction. And the danger is clear, and we certainly cannot ignore it. But we cannot allow it to control us. And government cannot do it alone. Businesses cannot do it alone. Individuals cannot do it alone. But together, we can prevent danger. Together, we can mitigate danger. And together, we can recover from danger. So let's look at what the state does on these fronts: prevention, mitigation, preparedness, and recovery. And I think perhaps this is best understood if we look at the example of NIU. Even before the tragedy occurred at NIU, the state was working with the university community on preparedness. In April of last year, Governor Blagojevich put together a task force to look at incident responses to college campuses. He created the Campus Security Task Force. Many of those panel recommendations were implemented before the incident at NIU. And this action and planning and coordination helped to ensure a quick flow of information as well as faster response from police, fire, and EMS personnel. And within minutes of that tragedy, assistance from first responders was on the way. And I don't have to tell you, but many of you have seen the headlines that describe the quick response from the NIU community, the NIU public safety personnel. And those efforts were also supported and supplemented by city, county, state, and federal assets. And at the governor's direction, we declared a state of an emergency. Our Bureau of Operations quickly jumped into gear, and they stood up the state's Emergency Operations Center. And with that declaration, it opened up a menu of resources that were available to the NIU community. And so, within hours, state resources were being deployed to provide assistance to the NIU community. For the immediate response, the state of Illinois provided an IEMA regional coordinator to go directly to the scene of NIU to start standing up a unified command operation. We were able to facilitate resource requests that included the Illinois State Police's Northern Tactical Response Team, state police officers, officers from the Natural Department of Resources to provide law enforcement assistance. Specialists from the Department of Human Services were dispatched to provide assistance to university mental health officials to conduct a crisis assessment. From a technology perspective, we had 2 mobile command vehicles that were deployed in an ITEX trailer to assist with communications in the field, to augment communications, and to stand up an interoperable communications pod in the field to provide that type of assistance. We also activated our mutual aid system, and we activated mutual aid from the perspective of fire and EMS as well as law enforcement. On the fire and EMS side, we activated the MABUS box alarm, which is the mutual aid box alarm system, and from the law enforcement side, we activated police officers from the Illinois Law Enforcement Alarm System. We had a response that included 16 ambulances, 2 air ambulances, more than 60 fire and EMT personnel, 15 law enforcement officers, and 2 command posts. And this was in addition to the response of the local community, of local public safety. But because we have one of the most robust mutual aid systems in the country that is recognized as a national leader, we were able to quickly provide these resources and assets to a community that was in need. But, of course, as many of you know, supporting the immediate response was not the end of the process, nor was it the end of the state's involvement. When the sun set on February 14th at NIU and the scene was secure, the scene was stabilized, it was not the beginning of the end, but rather, as Churchill said, it was the end of the beginning. And the human wreckage and sorrow is just now beginning to be addressed. We are at the start of a very long recovery process at NIU, and unlike the bricks and mortar recovery that many of us who are in the emergency management field are responsible or familiar with, this is a recovery, if you will, that is about reconstructing broken lives. This is a recovery about reconstructing shattered spirits. This isn't a recovery about physical property. This is a recovery of the mind. And it's important that we're out there to ensure that individuals that have been impacted by this tragedy receive the assistance that they need to begin the recovery process and to begin the healing process. So IEMA showcases, if you will, this approach as we use the example of NIU. And IEMA's approach to address clear danger through planning and response and recovery is demonstrated at NIU. But no matter what the disaster is, we have a full range of capabilities at our disposal. And we strive to ensure that we can be a self-sustaining state to the fullest extent possible. So what I'd like to do is to show you just briefly some examples of the capabilities that we have at the state of Illinois. What you see before you is the state's Emergency Operations Center. This is home to IEMA. It's home to the Illinois Terrorism Task Force. It's home to our REACT Center, which is our Radiological Emergency Assessment Center. It's also home to the Illinois National Guard and the state's Terrorism Intelligence Center. Bringing all of these entities together, all under one roof, allows us to enhance our flow of communication. It allows us to have strong collaboration. It allows us to have strong communication. And so this is the center that stood up during times of disaster and crisis in the state of Illinois. Interoperable communications. We are working in partnership with Motorola to establish a solid platform of interoperable communications throughout the state of Illinois. And we look at interoperability not just from a radio standpoint, but we look at it from the standpoint of satellite interoperability, video interoperability, GIS interoperability. All of this is important to emergency management, homeland security, as we work and fight to address the dangers that confront us. And so we've employed the STARCOM system in Illinois to serve as our platform for interoperable communications. We have a large state, the 5th largest state in the country. We have 102 counties. So we are working to ensure that we can have interoperability among all of these counties, among all of these jurisdictions. It's not easy, it's costly, but we are doing the best we can to ensure that we meet these unfunded mandates. Unified command vehicles. We have purchased through the Illinois Terrorism Task Force 13 or 14 of these mobile command vehicles, and we've assigned them to different jurisdictions throughout the state to assist them during times of crisis and disaster, so they can set up unified command operations in the field, so they have the technology that they need at their fingertips. And so we've been able to do that through Homeland Security funding. On the prevention front, the Illinois Terrorism Task Force. It's a model. Over 70 agencies comprising 15 committees. This is a cross-section of federal, state, local, and the private sector. We have associations and mutual aid organizations. But again, I'd like to highlight that we have a private sector committee because we recognize the importance of partnering with the private sector. This is a snapshot of our state's Terrorism Intelligence Center. In here, there is also representation from the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, state police analysts, and state police officers, all working together to address issues related to terrorism, prevention, and preparedness. We have a number of different technologies in place to assist us, to aid us in our efforts to be effectively prepared for disasters that confront us. As I mentioned before, Illinois is recognized as a national leader in mutual aid. You could see there the menu of all of the mutual aid partners that we have in the state of Illinois that could be immediately activated during times of crisis. The MABUS alarm, which is the fire and EMS mutual aid system, the law enforcement system, public health, emergency management. We have 102 counties with emergency management personnel. We've established a mutual aid partnership with all of them. Coroners. And most recently, you see there at the far bottom, is Illinois TERT, Telecommunicators Emergency Response Teams. During Katrina, they lost their 911 center. They needed assistance with dispatchers and call takers. We're establishing mutual aid agreements throughout the state, so that way, if there is a similar circumstance where a 911 center loses, whether it loses power or because of a significant disaster, they have to relocate to another location and they need assistance on a call taker or a dispatcher front, we can mobilize these resources from other jurisdictions to help out the jurisdiction that's in need. We have many different technical and specialized teams that we have placed strategically throughout the state. We have the state broken down into regions, and we have state weapons of mass destruction teams placed strategically in the different regions that we have throughout the state. Special response teams, again, these are just pictures of exercises that they've participated in and some of the equipment that they have available at their disposal. Illinois Urban Search and Rescue Teams, technical teams that can work during times of crisis, collapsed trench or other types of structures that require specialized expertise to go in and conduct recovery operations. We have many of those specialized teams now in the state of Illinois. Level A hazmat teams that can work in the hot zone. There's a hazmat situation, some sort of a chemical accident, or you name it. We have specialized teams. We have 40 Level A hazmat teams throughout the state of Illinois that are ready to be mobilized at a moment's notice. We have the IMERT teams, which are the medical response teams, also teams that are available to augment medical services during times of crisis. So these are just some of the capabilities that we have at our disposal. And we know that government simply cannot do it alone. You hear it all the time. We saw this experience again with Hurricane Katrina. We saw that we couldn't necessarily depend on local or the federal government for that matter. And so in the event of an overwhelming catastrophe or a disaster, we need everybody's help. So what can the public do to provide this assistance? What can businesses do to provide us with the aid that we may need? What I'd like to do right now is talk a little bit about what individuals can do to help, and then we'll talk about what businesses can do to help. What families can do to ensure that they are prepared for an emergency. They can create in their homes an emergency preparedness kit. At least 3 days worth of water, food, and medicine on hand is important. The kit should also include a battery-operated radio. It should have other survival essentials as well. And guides for these kits can be found on the IEMA website. In cold weather, like we're experiencing and with the impending snowstorms that are coming, individuals can have kits in their vehicles in the event that they are trapped or stranded as a result of snowstorms. And so it's important that every family also have an emergency communications plan. When disaster hits, children may be at school, parents may be at work. And so it's important that we know in advance how to contact each other in the event that we are affected by some sort of a catastrophic incident or an emergency. And this may be difficult because phone lines may be down. Cellular phone infrastructure may be impacted, and so it's important that perhaps you set up a meeting place or a location where you can meet after disaster strikes. Again, these guidelines are posted on our website. In addition to doing all that they can to assist with families. Individuals can also assist by being our eyes and being our ears. If individuals see something suspicious, they should call the local authorities and report it. It's interesting, we were doing some research on individuals providing assistance and aid during disasters, and what we found was that 95% of the time it's a citizen who is first on the scene of a major disaster. And so if we had more trained volunteers, perhaps we'd be able to save more lives. And recently, at the incident at NIU, there were a number of examples there where students helped to provide assistance and aid to some of the students that were wounded. Again, the more people that we have trained in first aid, the greater likelihood that we can save lives. There is no community or country that has all of the adequate public safety resources that they need to effectively handle a catastrophic incident. And if calamity strikes, we need trained volunteers that will be available to supplement trained first responders. And so consider joining organizations like the Red Cross. Consider joining organizations like the Salvation Army or Illinois Volunteers, which was a program that was recently unveiled by Governor Blagojevich. Individuals, again, can also help by being the eyes and the ears of our communities. I had a chance to address the Logan County Emergency Management Agency not too long ago and was very impressed by the fact that they have more than 400 trained volunteers, 150 trained weather spotters. These spotters are trained to see weather trouble before it hits, so people are warned and can get to safety. Again, people who see something suspicious should report it to the local authorities. The danger is clear, and we need individuals to help in our efforts. We would also like businesses to do their part, and they too can be prepared. And so, what if a disaster strikes your business? How many of you have a short-term supply of water or food for your employees? And don't forget your customers. You may have customers that you're providing service to. You may need to provide them with some supplies as well. How many of you have a plan to get your facility up and running in another location? How many of you have a plan in place to back up your data on a regular basis? And how many of you in your businesses support those individuals that volunteer in organizations like the Red Cross? How many of you encourage or reward employees who get involved, who volunteer? Businesses also need to be the eyes and the ears of the community. Businesses have a unique point. They have a vantage point that can herald the sign of trouble. Maybe a hardware store sees someone buy an unusual combination of potentially dangerous materials or items. Maybe someone sees individuals seeking training, like the September 11th terrorists did, and something just doesn't seem quite right. Business people oftentimes have a view not available to government agencies. We need them to be our eyes, we need them to be our ears. Building partnerships with the private sector is a critical component and should be a critical ingredient to every homeland security and emergency preparedness strategy in this country. It is said that the private sector owns 85% of the critical infrastructure in this country. Why would we not partner with them? During times of crisis, we're going to need help from the private sector, and they're going to need help from government. The Illinois Terrorism Task Force, as I mentioned to you before, is responsible for the state's terrorism strategy, homeland security strategy. Again, it's comprised of 15 committees with more than 70 agencies represented in a cross-section of disciplines to include the private sector. And so establishing these partnerships with the private sector is key, and it is important. This is just an example of the new ready.illinois.gov website. We have information that you can download, information about what individuals can do, information about what businesses can do. And so we ask you to take the opportunity to go online and to look at some of these brochures that are offered right off this website. It'll aid you from an individual standpoint, and it'll aid you from a business standpoint. And so here are some tips that you can take a look at and ensure that you are covering your ground, your basis, if you will, to ensure that you have all of these elements that are part of your business continuity of operations plan. So businesses can partner with us by providing products and services also that aid in our efforts. And I like to say this, and I've learned this from just my experiences with working with mentors and many other individuals in the field of public safety. You know, these products and services should not be items that are just created in a laboratory. These are items that need to be, you know, field tested. They need to be researched. They need input from Homeland Security and emergency management professionals. And so I challenge all of you who have companies that create products for Homeland Security and emergency management to seek the input from professionals in Homeland Security and emergency management. I also see a number of folks in this room that I have had the privilege and the honor of partnering with while I served at OEMC. And many of you do just that. You're committed to public safety. You provide products that aid us in our efforts. And to that end, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your commitment to public safety. I see a lot of friends here, AT&T, SDI, DeStefano, James Lee Witt. All of you are committed. Motorola, all of you are committed to public safety, and I commend you for that. So we need these technical tools. We need this assistance. We need this help to improve interoperability so we can improve our initiatives and so we can enhance our responses so that way we can save lives. So I ask businesses to continue to partner with us as we confront these dangers. And so no one can deny that we live in a time of clear danger. But then again, humans have lived with danger from their inception. The dangers were different, but they were no less real. History tells us that people do best when they recognize danger, address it as best as they can, and then go forth and live their lives. We want to be cognizant of this danger, but we don't want children carrying fear in their backpacks. We want people to reach for progress. We don't want people to cower in terror. We want our seniors to go to sleep at night with peace, not dread. Our job at IEMA is to recognize clear danger, but make sure that it does not become ever present. I ask you individuals and members of the business community to partner with us. Partner together to make sure that we never forget the danger is clear, but that it is not ever present. But if we are really committed to doing our job right, the danger will never be ever present danger. So thank you.
Welcome any questions. There's a there we go.
Here's a microphone. It's over here.
Just state your name and ask your question.
Hi, Kathy Posner, member of the Board of Governors of City Club, but asking my question in the capacity of being the sister of a senior State Department diplomat who is currently in Pristina, Kosovo, and, you know, certainly was worried about the Serbian rally that happened yesterday in the Serbian hatred against the United States. And I wondered, like, what kind of research we're doing, preparedness to protect us maybe from any problems of the hatred against the United States by the Serbians.
Well, I can answer that in this context. We, each and every day, work in collaboration with our local, our state, and our federal partners. Our philosophy in the state of Illinois is to address emergencies from an all-hazards perspective. And those types of emergencies that you just described fall within that all-hazards philosophy. And so day in and day out, we work very closely with our partners to ensure that we're collaborating, to ensure that we're communicating, so that way we can have the best plans possible, but also to ensure that we have the best execution of those plans as well.
You probably can't tell us if you've heard that something bad might be coming, right? Because that'd be a secret.
Yes.
Okay. If there's no one behind me, I have a second one. But I'll sit down if someone else has a question. Okay. I also, okay, now I'll put on another hat, 18th Police District Advisory Council, which in 18 and 1st Police District were part of a pilot program on early response teams. And I wondered if that's being expanded throughout the rest of the state, that kind of training?
It's occurring on a number of different fronts. I just had the privilege of welcoming 106 city core councils in Springfield, Illinois for the City Core Conference. We have these core councils that are placed strategically throughout the state, and these are trained volunteers that are doing just as you described and what I described earlier. They want to work and augment the emergency response professionals during disasters, and so we have 106 of those councils, and there is one council here right in Chicago that is sponsored through the Office of Emergency Management and Communications, and so we have folks that are committed to volunteering and folks that are committed to being trained as well to assist first responders.
Yeah, I wanted to join the training, but then I found out you had to go to the fire department training and like climb up and down things, so I knew I wouldn't be able to do it. But I'm supporting everybody else.
I thought you were going to say that you found out you had to go to Springfield.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, that would have been bad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Let's give a round of applause. I got a gift for you here. Thank you very much. On behalf of the City Club, Andrew, here. You get a City Club mug right there for you. You get also a one-year membership to the City Club of Chicago. There we go. And you get the history of the City Club. Thank you very much. Give them a round of applause. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.